let's begin. Good morning, everyone. I am Manisha Singh, Technical Lead of Abbott Molecular. In continuation with yesterday's training, we will take you through the Abbott Real-Time SARS-CoV-2 assay details with respect to Abbott M2000 system. I hope all the participants in the group are familiar with M2000 SP and M2000 RT system and have worked on HIV viral load already in their labs. So for any questions, please write in the chat box. We will take all the questions at the end of the session. So we are a little scared that at the end of the presentation, generally the line drops after 1 hour. So we will take all the quiz, survey and the questions we will take at the end. So let's begin. So the training objectives of today's session is to provide the basic knowledge of sample extraction and PCR techniques used for the Abbott real-time SARS-CoV-2 assay, and also to provide training for the successful performance of the Abbott real-time SARS-CoV-2 assay. So the very first slide, I would like to update you that what is the intended use of this assay. I hope all of you have the package insert of assay already. If you do not have, we will send the package insert to all the participants so that they can go through it, all the performance characteristics, intended use, what are the materials required, protocol, everything is mentioned in the package insert. So intended use of the assay, what does the package insert says? Abbott real-time SARS-CoV-2 assay is a real-time reverse transcriptase polymerase chain reaction test intended for the qualitative detection of nucleic acid from the SARS-CoV-2 in nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swabs from patients who are suspected of COVID-19 by their healthcare provider. The results are for the identification of SARS-CoV-2 RNA. So the target region of SARS-CoV-2 RNA is detected and it is interpreted by the software. SARS-CoV-2 RNA is generally detectable in the nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swabs during the acute phase of infection. Positive results are indicative of the presence of SARS-CoV-2 RNA. At the same time, clinical correlation with patient history and the other diagnostic information is necessary to determine the patient infection status. Positive results, it does not rule out bacterial infection or co-infection with other viruses. Negative results do not preclude SARS-CoV-2 infection and should not be used as the sole basis for patient management decisions. Negative results must be combined with clinical observations, patient history, and the epidemiological information. The last 3 lines, this is really important. The Abbott real-time SARS-CoV-2 assay is intended for use by qualified and trained clinical laboratory personnel, specifically instructed and trained in the techniques of real-time PCR and in vitro diagnostic procedures. There are few limitations of the procedure, which is also mentioned in the package insert. I will not read out all the limitations, but the few limitations I will definitely like to read it for you. As I mentioned in the previous slide, use of the Abbott real-time SARS-CoV-2 assay is limited to personnel who have been trained in the procedures of molecular diagnostic assay and the Abbott M2000 system. Optimal performance of this test requires appropriate specimen collection, storage, and transport to the test site. Detection of SARS-CoV-2 RNA may be affected by sample collection methods, patient factors like presence of symptoms and or the stage of infection. The impact of vaccines, antiviral therapeutics, antibiotics, chemotherapeutic or immunosuppressant drugs have not been evaluated. Performance has only been established with the specimen types listed in the intended use. Other specimen types have not been evaluated and should not be used with the assay. The rest of the limitations, you can go through the package insert. I have already read the important limitations of the assay. Now, let's move on to the assay features. What are the important assay features? Specimen types, there are two specimen types which are validated with Abbott real-time SARS-CoV-2 assay. They are the nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swabs. The assay is performed on Abbott M2000 system. So you have already seen the system. It is already installed in your labs, which is the automated M2000 SP. SP is the sample preparation unit, automated extractor that is used for the nucleic acid extraction and the master mix preparation and PCR plate setup. M2000 RT is a real-time PCR that is used for the amplification and detection. The target regions for this assay, there are two targets which are detected. The first one is RNA-dependent RNA polymerase gene target and the N genes of the SARS-CoV-2 viral RNA. So it's a dual target assay. The probes that are used for the detection of these targets, both the probes are labeled with FAMDI. So there is no requirement of differentiation of the detection of these two targets separately. Therefore, both the probes are labeled with same dye, which is a FAMDI. The results are reported as positive or negative. So you will get a cycle number along with the interpretation for the positive result. And for the negative results, there will be no cycle number generated and the interpretation will be not detected. Now let us move on the requirements. What are the requirements to perform this assay? So the very first requirement is the availability of Abbott M2000 system, which is the M2000 SP and RT. Real-time PCR, you have to calibrate 3 dyes because 3 fluorescent dyes are used for the detection of different targets. So these 3 dyes are FAM, Wick, and ROX. So these 3 dyes are exactly the same dyes which all the labs are used for the detection of HIV viral load. So all your systems are optically calibrated. Just we have to go back and check that the optical calibration is stable for 6 months. So they are calibrated and they are well within the validated range. So these 3 dyes, FAM, Wick, and ROX are already calibrated. So this is the requirement for the detection of target regions of the SARS-CoV-2 assay. The another important point that I have already taken in the previous slide is the laboratory personnel training, and they should be instructed and trained in the techniques of real-time PCR and in vitro diagnostic procedures and on operating the Abbott M2000 SP and RT instruments. Now, let us see what are the target regions and which fluorophores detects this target regions. So there are 3 dyes, FAM, ROX, and Wick. FAM dye detects the RDRP and the N genes, which are specific to the SARS-CoV-2 strain. ROX dye is the reference dye, which is present in the master mix already, and the Wick dye, it detects the internal control. So if you see this particular diagram, so the Abbott assay probes, they detect regions in the N region. One probe is designed in the N region and one probe is designed in the open reading frame 1B, which is the RDRP. Both these targets are specific to the current SARS-CoV-2 virus. And there is an internal control, which is present in every sample and control, and they are labeled with Wick dye. So in every well, there are 3 targets which are detected. 2 targets are labeled with FAM dye, which is specific to the SARS-CoV-2 current strain, and the second dye is Wick dye, which is the internal control. Turnaround time. What is the turnaround time and what are the different batches that you can run with this particular system? So here in this table, you can see there are 4 different batches, 24, 48, 72, and 96. You can see the segregation of time, how much time sample preparation your M2000 SP takes, and the amplification detection M2000 RT takes, and the approximate total time for the different batch sizes. So if you see in the table, the real-time PCR time, amplification and detection, it remains the same irrespective of the batch size. The time changes with the sample preparation on the number of samples which are going to be extracted. So since this is a high volume test, so generally 96 sample batch is run by all the users and customers. So for 96 sample batch, so sample preparation time is around 4 hours. Amplification and detection is same for all the batches, 3 hours, 5 minutes. So the total approximate time is 7 hours, 5 minutes. In this slide, for 196 test, single run per day, the segregation is given in this particular format. So here you can also see the hands-on time, the extraction time, the master mix preparation time, and the real-time PCR detection and amplification time. So if you see these red arrows, this will give you the picture how much hands-on time is required by the user, and then the extraction time, how much exact extraction time is required. This particular block, it shows the reagent addition or the master mix preparation and PCR plate assembly. And then the yellow block, it shows you the time for amplification and detection. So for one cycle, if you start here at the 0 hours, the one cycle, it takes around, including the hands-on time, it takes around 7 hours, 41 minutes. So here you can see the time point and what is expected. The steps are mentioned against the time point. So first cycle, it will report in 7 hours, 41 minutes. And how many tests are reported? 96. The patient reports are released are 94, because in every batch there are 2 controls. So in 7 hours, 41 minutes, you can get 94 patient reports. This slide tells you about the workflow optimization. So if the workflow is optimized for 24-hour shift, 3 shifts in a day, so 5 cycles of 96 test runs can be performed. How it can be performed? All the SP and RT, you know, these 2 instruments are independent instruments and they can run parallelly. So once the extraction process in M2000 SP is over and the plate goes inside the real-time PCR, your M2000 SP again gets free to take up the next 96 samples. So you can see all these 5 cycles, they run in the overlapping manner. So if you do the workflow optimization in the lab, so in the first 7 hours, 41 minutes, you get the 94 patient results. Subsequently, after every 4 hours, 90 minutes, you get the another 94 tests. So the different time points in last 24 hours, 57 minutes, 470 patient reports can be generated if the workflow is optimized. So here you can see in the previous slide, you have all the hands-on time and the differentiation of extraction, master mix preparation, and the real-time PCR. So here exactly in the same manner with the overlapping units, you can get the workflow optimization around 470 patient results in 24 hours time. Now, let us move to the reagents and kits which are required to run the assay. So the first kit is Abbott Real-Time SARS-CoV-2 Control Kit. The list number is 9777080. It exactly looks like the kit that you receive for viral load. So all of you, the dimensions of the kit, the storage conditions is exactly the same that you have already seen the kits, how exactly it looks like. So there are 2 sets of 2 controls, negative control and positive control. And there are 8 sets in one control kit, which means there are 16 vials, 8 vials of negative control, 8 vials of positive control. The positive control, the amount of copies is around 1000 copies per ml is present for the SARS-CoV-2 RNA. So you can run 8 times amplification kit with one control kit, because the maximum batch size is the 96 samples. So one kit is 96 kits. So 8 times you can run your control. With one control, you can run 8 times the amplification kit. So the storage condition is -25 degrees Celsius to -15. So it can be stored at -20 degrees Celsius. So you can see here, these are the 8 negative vials and 8 positive control vials. And there are 8 sets. And one set is required for every 96 batch run. The next reagent is the amplification reagent. Amplification reagent, it looks exactly same like your HIV viral load. So it has 4 amplification reagent packs like this. So there are 4 packs available and each pack can perform 24 tests. So 24 into 4, there are 96 tests. One pack can perform 24 tests. So there are 4 different packs are available inside the kit. Along with these 4 packs, there are 4 vials of internal control. So the first component in the kit is the internal control. This comes in a bottle like this. There are 4 vials, and every vial contains 1.2 ml liquid, internal control. Amplification reagent packs, there are 4 packs. In every pack, there are 3 bottles which are housed in a single cassette. So the 3 bottle, what are the contents of this 3 bottle? The green color cap, it has the activation reagent. The center bottle, this is the amber color bottle, it has the oligonucleotides, probes, primers, DLTPs, and in the buffered solution. And the third vial, it has the enzyme, RTTH enzyme, which has dual activity, reverse transcriptase, and polymerase activity. So all these 3 vials are housed in a single cassette, and one cassette can perform 24 tests. For running 94 tests, you need to load all the 4 reagent packs to the M2000SP. What is the storage condition? The storage condition is same as minus 25 degrees Celsius to minus 15. So it can be stored at minus 20. The list number of this kit is 9N77090. The next reagent is the extraction reagent. Extraction reagent, it contains the 5 different buffers: lysis, microparticles, wash 1, wash 2, elution buffer. Do not get confused with the name DNA. This is the description of this particular kit, Abbott M sample preparation system DNA. This particular kit extracts the total nucleic acid. So the kit that you use it for HIV viral load, you can see here, you will see the name RNA. But here we use this 6K1224. This is the total nucleic acid extraction kit. For SARS virus, the respiratory samples are used. So respiratory samples are difficult samples and they have a lot of inhibitors. So to overcome the challenges of inhibitors, total nucleic extraction protocol is used. So the labs who already have the experience of running EID assay, HIV-1 qualitative assay, they use this particular extraction kit, which is the total nucleic extraction kit. Do not get confused by the term DNA here. So it has 5 different buffers, and this kit is also compatible with Abbott M2000SP, and it can perform 96 extractions with one kit. There are 20 bottles. In one set, there are 5 buffers. So this one set is used for 24 extractions. For 96 tests, or the 4 sets are required. The storage condition for this buffer is 15 to 30 degrees Celsius at the room temperature, like you keep it your extraction kit for HIV viral load. So the temperature conditions are for storage are exactly the same. One of the reagents which are not supplied by Abbott in the kit is USB grade 190 to 200 proof ethanol. That's the absolute ethanol that you require for the preparation of the reagents for extraction. So you have to be careful. Use the absolute ethanol, which does not contain the denaturants, and it should be pure as 95 to 100%. The next requirement is the protocol, the application specific file. So Abbott real-time application assay, it comes with the application protocol file by the list number 9N77001. So what does this application file does? It contains protocols for the processing of real-time SARS-CoV-2 assay on SP and RT. It includes the algorithm for data reduction and result reporting. Same version of the protocol has to be installed on both M2000 SP and RT, and it requires system software version 8.1 or higher. So all the NICO labs, you already have the software version installed 8.1, and this particular application file will be installed. It can be installed remotely. So it is not necessary that you require a CD to install this protocol. Our engineers and application people can help you to install the protocol remotely as well. So we will provide you this application file by next week, so that we will have the protocol installed in both the M2000 SP and RT before starting of the assay and the lab. Now, let's move to the next section, where we will talk about the specimens and their handling, sample preparation, real-time PCR, and how the results are interpreted. So, so very important point. We have discussed this section yesterday in details. So for specimen handling, we will strongly recommend and suggest to go through the CDC and WHO guidelines. So I hope yesterday we have shared in the presentation all the important links where CDC and WHO have recommended how the COVID samples should be handled. So if you do not have the links with you, just let us know. We will forward you those links so that you can go back and read those specific guidelines for specimen handling. As we all know, the virus is new, and until more information becomes available, precautions should be taken in handling specimens that are suspected or confirmed for SARS-CoV-2 virus. And as per the CDC guidelines, for routine viral testing, BSL level 2 is recommended. So I hope all of you have seen these guidelines and have gone through the laboratory procedures of CDC and WHO, where they have mentioned how these specimens should be handled. So the very first question that comes, and yesterday also it has come up about the aerosol containment. So for aerosol containment, it is always advisable and recommended that the transfer of specimens, if the manual transfer of specimens from one container to another container is required, or if you want to open a container with potential contaminated cap, it should be performed in the biosafety cabinet. And whenever manual pipetting is performed, always use aerosol barrier pipette tips, and it is recommended to use the elongated barrier tips as suggested yesterday in the presentation, so that it cannot actually spoil the barrel of the micro. And the pipette tips must be used only once for every sample. The next section of cleaning and the decontamination procedures. All the users of the M2000SP, I hope they have gone through the operation manual, M2000SP and RT operation manual. So there is a section in the M2000SP operation manual, service and maintenance. In service and maintenance, there is a section called decontamination procedures. So in decontamination procedures, you can go through all the procedures are mentioned there stepwise, that how the spills of reagents and samples are to be taken care of. So I can show you the section where it is mentioned in the operation manual. Yeah, so this is the operation manual of M2000SP. So in the section 9, service and maintenance, in this particular section, so for any PCR laboratory, like we have discussed yesterday, there is a limitation of amplicon contamination. So it is always advisable to have two different areas, sample preparation area and amplification area. So for sample preparation area, that this is required for dedicating processing samples and adding process specimens and controls to the optical reaction plate. So this is the area where you keep the M2000SP with your biosafety cabinet. And then you have the amplification area where the M2000RT, the real-time PCR, is installed for the amplification and detection. So next section is the specimen collection type. So Abbott assay has already validated primary vials, BD primary vials and Copen primary vials. It can be directly loaded on the M2000SP. So we are not sure what kind of primary vials labs are using. So there are two types of vials. One is the small vial with 1 ml of VTM, and the another one is the large one with the 3 ml of viral transport medium in the solution. So this particular vials, the primary vials, can be loaded directly on the M2000SP. And if you want to load the primary vials directly on M2000SP, kindly reach out to us, to the Abbott representative, because this is required special calibration at the sample input rack. Otherwise, if the primary vials cannot be loaded, so you can transfer the sample in the secondary tube. The secondary tube is the reaction vessel or the master mix tube. So the different sample racks and the sample volume are required for kind of reaction vessel that you are going to use. So if you're using reaction vessel as a secondary tube, So in that case, the sample rack has to be used 13 mm. So this is the same sample rack that you use it for HIV viral load assay, and the same reaction vessel. So the liquid volume that you require is 1.3 ml. Or in case if you want to load the primary vials directly, talk to the engineers, APID representatives. They will help you to calibrate the primary vial so that it can be loaded directly. Just one thing we have to be very careful if you want to load the primary vials. So the swabs inside the VTM or UTM has to be removed, and that removal of swab it should be done in the biosafety cabinet. So the swab should be removed before loading the primary vials on the M2000 SP. So everyone knows about the principle of sample preparation. So sample preparation is basically required to extract the nucleic acids from the viral particles and purifying them and concentrate them in the eluates so that they can be used for the amplification and detection for the downstream processing. In one batch, 96 samples can be processed together, and for 96 samples, there are 94 patient specimens which are processed, and the 2 controls are used in every batch for its validity check. All the consumables and sample preparation reagents. So all the labs have already used the instruments. So you know what are the M2000 specific consumables are there, like the reaction vessels, deep well plate, optical plate, reagent vessels. All these consumables are exactly the same consumables that you use it with your HIV viral load assay. And the sample preparation reagents are the buffers that we have already spoken in the previous slide. So you know how these consumables and sample preparation reagents are loaded on the M2000 SP. So once you start the software, the protocol for COVID assay, the software will guide you what consumables or reagents are to be placed where. So all the processes are actually reflected on the software when you process the run. And once the extraction is completed, so the purified nucleic acids are collected in the deep well plate. Exactly the same manner. It's very same as you do it for HIV viral load assay. So the deep well plate will have the eluate. So from there, the master mix preparation and the PCR plate assembly is done. And after that, the plate is sealed and it is kept in the real-time PCR. So for the 96 sample batch, what are the different reagents which are required to be placed at different locations? So if you're running a 96 sample batch, so as I said, there are 4 amplification reagent packs. Each pack can do 24 tests. So the 24 into 4 reagent packs has to be loaded on the system. 4 IC vials are required. 4 lysis bottles are required. Only 1 microparticle bottle is required. 2 wash 1, 2 wash 2, and 1 elution buffer is required for the 96 sample batch run. So for the preparation of buffers, the 3 buffers, lysis buffer, wash buffer 1 and wash buffer 2, you need to add 35 ml, 23 ml and 70 ml of ethanol to each of these buffers before extraction is done for the samples. So as I already said that this particular reagent, absolute ethanol is not provided. So labs have to procure absolute ethanol for the preparation of the buffers. And for every lysis buffer, 750 microliters of IC is added to each lysis DNA solution. So this step is prepared at the first before the reagents are prepared. So you have to add the 750 microliters of IC in the lysis buffer, and then you have to load this buffer in the reagent vessels and the carriers. So next slide will tell you that how this.
Someone wants you to go back to the earlier slide, Manisha. The one before this. Yeah.
Ma'am, number of washable bottle and microparticles 4. No. Only microparticles 2 and washable bottle 4 and washable 2 bottle 4.
No. So so here there is a little change. For this particular assay, you just require 1 bottle of microparticle for 96 tests and 1 bottle of elution buffer for 96 tests. So you do not require in equal proportion for all the buffers. So this table is already there in the package insert. So for 96 tests, you require only these number of bottles. So we have to be careful. If you add 2 bottles, then the software will generate, it will warn you that the liquid volume is higher. So just 1 bottle of microparticle is required for the extraction of 96 samples.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the way the reagents are loaded on the M2000 SP. So those who have used the system, you know that there are two reagent carriers, reagent carrier 1 and reagent carrier 2. So in the reagent carrier 1, there are three positions. So the first two positions should be filled with lysis buffer, and the lysis buffer is already having internal control added to it. So the two lysis buffer at first and second position. Then at the third position of the reagent carrier 1, only one microparticle bottle has to be loaded. In the reagent carrier 2, at the first position, 2 bottles of wash buffer 1, 2 bottles of wash buffer 2, and at the third position, 1 bottle of elution buffer has to be added. Just see all the buffers with green color, they have to be prepared with ethanol, absolute ethanol to be added to these buffers before loading on the M2000 SP. And we have to be very careful. The fifth and the sixth vessel, wash buffer 2 and elution buffer. So these buffers should not be mixed with wash buffer 1 and lysis buffer because it contains GITC, which is the potential inhibitor of PCR. So we have to be very careful while loading these reagents so that it should not be mixed with each other while loading on the M2000 SP. Now the next section is the real-time PCR, thermal cycling and fluorescence signal detection. So what happens in real-time PCR and how the signals are detected? So I guess all of you are aware of the real-time PCR technology, how basically it works. So SARS virus is an RNA virus. So first RNA has to be converted into cDNA and then the polymerase activity happens for the amplification. So the enzyme present in the master mix, it's the RTTH enzyme, which has both the reverse transcriptase and polymerase activity. So it first converts the RNA into cDNA, followed by the polymerase activity is used for the amplification of the target region. The IC, the internal control, which is added here, it is derived from the hydroxypyruvate reductase gene of cucurbita pepper. So it is added simultaneously to all the controls and the samples because we add the IC in the lysis buffer. So it goes into all samples and controls. The target sequence we have already discussed for SARS region is the two regions, RD, RP and N region, and which is detected by the FAM dye. ROX is the reference dye and WIC is used for the detection of hydroxypyruvate gene as an internal control. Amplified products are detected by measuring fluorescence at each amplification cycle, which are emitted from fluorophores. So this is the basic technology of real-time PCR. The fluorescence are detected as the cycle number increases. This slide talks about the probe chemistry. What is the probe chemistry which is used here is the single-stranded linear probe chemistry. So the probes which are used for the detection of the target regions, they are present in this configuration. Reporter dye is present in the close proximity of quencher dye when the target region is not present. So what happens as the PCR, real-time PCR chemistry, all the fluorescence of the reporter dye is quenched in this particular configuration. When the target is present in the sample, what happens? When the target is there, this probe format, it unwinds itself and it goes and binds to the target region. What happens? The reporter dye will become free from the quencher dye, so that once the reporter dye is excited by the halogen lamp, which is there in the real-time PCR, once it is excited, the fluorescence is detected by the camera. So just to understand in a simple language, in the absence of target, your configuration of the probe is like this. So all the fluorescence is quenched. There is no detection of fluorescence. In the presence of target, the reporter dye is free to fluoresce because the quencher is already away from the reporter. So this is the chemistry which is used for the detection of FAM WIC fluorescence of the SARS-CoV-2 specific targets and the internal control target. Passive reference dye is added to each reaction that allows for the normalization of the target and IC signals. So now we have moved to the data reduction, how the results are interpreted, how the results are generated. So this particular software, it has a specific data reduction algorithm which generates the data, whether it is positive or negative. So the very first process is the normalization of the signal. So the normalization generally happens with the help of reference dye, which is already present in the master mix. So how basically it works? So this is the raw fluorescence, if you can see here. So this is the target or IC fluorescence. This is the raw fluorescence which is generated. after the PCR. And this is the reference dye. So for the normalization of the fluorescence, the ratio of the fluorescence of target is taken from the reference dye. So once the normalization occurs, so the normalized fluorescence looks like this. So this is the raw data, and after normalization, the curve looks like this. So what does this particular normalization with reference dye does? It unifies the response signals, it smooths out the irregularities in responses, and it also reduces variance that happens due to the variance in the pipetting volumes. So it is really important to have the fluorescence reference dye normalization before the data interpretation. So it automatically happens in the software. So just the result that you get, it's the automated result, whether it is positive or negative. So all this data algorithm reduction, it happens at the end in the software, at the back of the software, and the final result, you will get it in the form of positive or negative. After the normalization, baselining happens. So I will not go into much details because this is all the real-time PCR basics, and these are the various validity checkpoints that happens in the software before the results are generated. So after normalization, baselining happens. So you can see how after baselining the results looks like. So this is the result which occurs after the baselining of the raw fluorescence curves after the normalization. So as I said, in this software, CT, the cycle number and the cycle threshold or the cycle threshold is also generated along with the positive response. So how the positive response are generated? So this dotted red line is the threshold. So once the amplification of the positive sample crosses the threshold line, that particular cycle number is generated for the positive response. So there are other validity checkpoints like MR, maximum ratio. In the simple language, maximum ratio is also calculated by the software, which basically differentiates the positive amplification from the non-specific amplification. So in the software, in the data reduction algorithm, there are 20 validity checkpoints. So all the validity checkpoints have to be passed so that the result will be generated. So it's not like a open based system where you have to reduce the data, whether it is positive or negative, because it looks the amplification curves, whether it is a pure sigmoidal curve or not. So there is a factor which we call maximum ratio, MR. So it's a validity checkpoint until and unless it is well within the range which is assigned for this assay. The software will not call that particular sample as positive or negative. So there are various validity checkpoints for the data reduction, but you need not to be worried for this result interpretation, the data algorithms, because it happens in the back of the software. So the result that you get, you get the results like this. So it's a very simple format. So here you can see, so this is how the result is generated. So this page tells you the location of the samples. It will give you the sample ID. What is the sample ID? Sample type, assay name, result, and the interpretation. So you can see at the first two locations, these are the controls. So that the sample type is control. So the first one is negative control, second one is the positive control. So the negative control is interpreted as not detected, and the positive control, it will give you a CT number. In this assay, you will get a CT number for the positive response. And for rest of the samples, here you can see, so for all the positive samples, the software has generated the cycle number, at which particular cycle number the result is positive. And for all the negative samples, you will get not detected and the interpretation is negative. So the result is very simple, either positive or negative. If the response is positive, you will generate a cycle number along with it. If you want to see the details of the sample, you just double click the sample, you will get all the amplification curves and the reagent details along with the patient report. So this is how the results are generated, and the reagent specific information, sample written information are also there on the page. So it is automatic generation of the report. Now, the very important point is the assay control evaluation. So this is very similar with your HIV viral load assay. When do you call a particular result is a valid result? So for that, you have to have valid negative control and the positive control. If you do not have the valid negative and positive control, the software flags all the sample with plus QC and minus QC, or minus IC or plus IC flag. So always here in this, if any of the sample generates some kind of error, so either the entire result will be flat if the controls are failed, so you will get plus QC or minus QC flag, or if the error is generated at any of the sample, so error code will be generated. If you double click on the error code, it will take you to the troubleshooting section of the operation manual, where it will tell you that what kind of error is generated and what is the troubleshooting step for that. So here, just to make you aware that how the assay control evaluations are done, for the negative control, you should always have a valid IC and a non-reactive target. If the target is reactive, it will generate minus QC flag, or if there are IC related errors, it will generate minus IC flag. For the validity of negative control, you should have these two parameters, which are valid IC and non-reactive target. For positive control, you should have valid IC and reactive target with CT within the validity range. So in this particular assay, there is another modification that assay cutoff is already set. So you have the assay cutoff value as well here in this assay. So the cutoff value is 31.50, cycle number 31.50. So any response before 31.50 is a positive sample. If you get a amplification response after 31.50, the software call it as negative. Why? Because the assay cutoff has been already set and validated for this data reduction algorithm. So in case of target CT, which is out of its validity range, it means if it is beyond the 31.50, it will generate plus QC flag. Or if have the IC related errors, then it will generate the plus IC flag. So if any of the QC fails, then specimens results are still generated, but yes, as per the protocol, as per the US FDA protocol, the package insert, it says that you have to retest the samples if any of the control, negative or the positive control, fails. So how the internal control evaluations are done. So for any SARS-CoV-2 detected, any sample which has the positive response for SARS-CoV-2 virus, its result will be reported as positive and an IC flag will be shown next to the result. So here in this software, in the assay interpretation, in the result interpretation, if you see in the package insert, so I will compare with the HIV viral load. In HIV viral load, for any positive sample, if you have IC related error, in that case, there will be no result generated and the error code is also assigned to that sample. But in this particular assay, if you have any positive response, any positive sample, positive amplification for SARS-CoV-2 RNA, and in case if there is any IC related error to the positive sample, in that case, still the sample is reported as positive. So the report will be generated for that particular positive sample in case if there is a IC related error for the positive sample. So here you have a little flexibility for all positive samples which has IC related error. Still the results are valid and it can be reported for the positive response. It is already mentioned in the package insert. But for the negative samples, for all the negative response, if the IC has error, if the error code is generated, you cannot report that result because that negative result may be because of the PCR inhibitors or the inefficient extraction. So for negative results, you have to repeat the test, but for positive response, if there is IC related error, you can still go ahead and report the result as positive. So how the specimen results are interpreted. So if the target is reactive, and if the cycle number is below CT cutoff value, which is 31.50, the result is reported as whatever the cycle number and the interpretation is positive. So as I said in the previous slide, the cutoff value is 31.50. So any positive response below 31.50, it will generate a cycle number and the interpretation will be positive. If the target is non-reactive, or if the CN value is above the CT cutoff value, which is 31.50, the result is not detected. Just do not get confused if you get in the software, if the software says it is negative sample, but still you can see the amplification, which is happening above the 31.50 cycle number. So don't get confused that whether it's a positive or negative sample. It has been validated. The assay cutoff is assigned as 31.50. So any response above 31.50 will be taken as negative, because there is another validity checkpoint, which is the MR value. That's the maximum ratio. Basically, it differentiates the true positive amplification from the non-specific amplification. So this is also one of the validity checkpoints which taken into consideration, and this is specific for every assay. So here you can see the MR value is also written here below the target cycle number. So the software automatically calculates, and if it is well within the MR range, then only the software calls it a positive response. So this is how the samples are interpreted, as positive or negative. There are other signal validity evaluations that happens in the software at the background. Is the fluorescence signal intensity checkpoint, reference signal noise level checkpoint, and the amplification curve characteristic shape features, whether it is a retarded amplification or different kind of amplification. So there are various validity checkpoints are there. Until unless all the samples passes this validity checkpoints, the software doesn't call it a positive or a negative sample. If any of the sample fails this validity checkpoints, an error code is generated. This is how the results are interpreted. So you can see this particular response in the package insert. So different types of results and how it is interpreted and what are the remarks. So you will get this particular table in the package insert. Now, the last part of the presentation is the performance characteristics. So if you want to get the details of the performance characteristics, you can very well go and find all the performance characteristics with details in the package insert. So the first part is the limit of detection. The limit of detection of this particular assay is 100 copies per ml. So just be careful that this particular assay is a very sensitive assay. Yes, we will complete it fast. So the just 4 slides are left. So the limit of detection I've already talked about is 100 copies per ml. And all the probes and primers have 100% homology to all the available circulating SARS-CoV-2 virus. So all this information is there in the package insert for the reactivity, inclusivity. Cross reactivity, as also you can see the last page of the package insert, there is no cross reactivity of the real-time SARS-CoV-2 assay with the selected microorganisms. A long list of microorganisms with their concentrations are listed in the package insert. So it is 100% specific. And the clinical performance has already been evaluated at different concentrations of the LOD, 1x, 20x. So you can see there is a 100% detection rate at all the different concentrations of the LOD. And there is a 100% agreement with all the performance characteristics have been done. So you can find this information in the package insert with more details are mentioned at the last section. Last 2 pages had all this performance characteristics. So this is the last slide. So here you can see the assay characteristics. What are the assay features? So this particular assay is compatible with M2000 SP and RT. The sample type which are compatible are nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal specimens. The turnaround time for 94 reported patients is 7.5 hours, and with the workflow optimization, you can do it for 70 patient reports in a day. The 2 types of controls, negative and positive control, is to be run with every batch. Sample extraction, the sample volume which it takes for the extraction is 0.5 ml of respiratory sample. The master mix enzyme is RTT to the virus is RPNN, and both the probes are labeled with FAM. Internal control is there is a Perkin gene sequence which is labeled with WIC, and both the targets specific to SARS as well as IC are detected in the same well. Qualitative results generated are positive or negative. Limit of detection of the assay is 100 copies per ml, and specificity is 100%. So this is the assay features. So you can find it in the package insert. And also, if you want to see the guidelines for the validation of specific specimen types, you can go to these links and also find different action wise and specific specimen types which are validated. So that is what is the performance characteristics of this assay. I understand there are a lot of signal issues. After half an hour, the signal dropped, but we can take up all your questions. And if you want to have the session again, we can have the session again. We can on Monday we can rerun the session if you want to listen again. Different WebEx invite, we can see the web invite, we can have the session again. So this is all about the real-time SARS-CoV-2 assay. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and we can now take the questions.
There are many questions in the chat box. If you go to it.
Okay, ma'am, you can just
one question from yesterday was that was from Nari yesterday, whether we could use BAL as samples. Evidently not validated. That's isn't it?
Right.
Once
So right now, the only samples which are validated with this assay is nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swab. If any of these samples comes in as a validated sample type, so definitely that will be added in the package insert, and we will inform you once it is validated. But right now, only these two samples are validated.
Yeah, second question was also from yesterday about the optimization of the tests in 24 hours. I hope you were able to give them clearer understanding. I don't know how many people have got that whole thing clear. If not, I'm sure Robert will go on site and explain how to do the optimization for people who have got a lot of backlog of samples.
Okay, so we can share these two slides, the workflow for 96 tests and the 5 cycles. So these two slides are self-explanatory, which can give you the idea that how the 5 cycles can be accommodated in a single day with 24 hours of management. So we are going to share these slides with you, so you will have a clear idea.
Okay, now the next question is, there was a question which is, if lab has central AC facility, is it okay for lab processing area and amplification area? What does that mean? The question is not very clear. Looking towards, that means the centralized AC which is shared by the lab. I assume that is your case, Nawaz. That's your question. If it's a centralized AC and the lab is sharing the AC, will there be a problem for doing the whole?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So do we have an answer to that question, Sunita? Do you think you can answer that question?
Yeah, so I wrote the answer in the chat box because since this RT-PCR operation will be done in a biosafety level 2 facility, so there are certain mechanisms in place in the lab which will help in containing your procedures to generate aerosol. For example, when handling a specimen which is infective, that whole specimen will be handled in a biosafety cabinet, so that there's a barrier between you and the specimen, and the person who is handling the specimen is protected. Similarly, there are provisions of pipetting is another procedure which generates aerosol and predisposes a person to risk of getting infection. And this is why pipette with the aerosol barrier is used in a BSL-2 facility. And then the third is centrifuge, and centrifuge safety features have to be used. And yesterday also, we had emphasized on the need of certain personal protective equipment while you're handling samples right from the time when the sample comes into the lab till the time it is loaded on the instrument until the time it is detected. So there are certain steps which helps you in identifying the risk activities and how to protect yourself and the environment. Regarding the ventilation, since we'll adopt all these features to control your aerosol generating procedures, the risk to the environment is not there. And therefore, the standard air condition which you have is good enough and you don't have to worry about. There are certain criteria of ventilation when it comes to a health facility which is taking care of the patients and which are COVID and they may be seriously ill, like in ICU. For those, we have certain IPC infection prevention control criteria and recommendations. For example, if there's a patient who's in ICU, then managing the patient should be in a condition where there's negative pressure, so that the droplets are not moving outside that contained area, which is not the case in labs. So in terms of ventilation and the air conditioned ventilation which you have right now doing HIV-1 testing, the same is good enough for doing COVID-19 testing. You need not worry. So
next question is for you, Manisha. In DNA, after addition of alcohol for 48 samples run, we take only 95 ml of lysis buffer for each bottle. Is in COVID, is the same in COVID also? 48 samples, 95 ml of lysis buffer from each bottle. Is it the same for COVID?
So there's relaxation over here, so you don't measure the amount of lysis buffer in alcohol, so you can add the entire 105 ml in the lysis reagent bottle, in the vessel, in the reagent vessel. So you don't measure the amount.
Does that answer your question, Kasturba? That is your question from Kasturba. Has it answered you? Well?
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. The next question is there a cutoff CT pre-programmed in this version like it set in HIV viral? Yes, that's what she said. Manisha, please.
Yes, so the cutoff, as I mentioned in the slide, cutoff is already defined here, 31.50.
31.5. Yeah. It's already there. Next question is, okay, there is an answer to some question. So another question is the CT value of RDP and NG the same? Yeah, that's a question I also would like an answer for.
Okay, so that's a very good question. So both the target RDRP and the NG are detected in a single channel, which is a PAM channel. So whatever CT you will get, it will be a combined fluorescence for both the lesions. The CT value that is generated, that will be a combined fluorescence for RDRP and NG. So you will not get any differentiation and the fluorescence is same in both the targets. So you get just one CT for the first response.
Okay. Next question is from DJ. Yes.
BJ also had the same question, so BJ also got answered.
Okay. Okay. Another question from JJ. Does this give me inconclusive report? I'm neither positive nor negative.
Yeah.
It will not give any kind of inconclusive report since the data algorithm is already set here. So all the results are interpreted and it will give you a clear-cut report whether if it is error code generated or whether it's clear cut positive or negative. So we have the interpretation for all scenarios here. So there will be no inconclusive results.
Next is cutoff for C for positive control and sample are the same. Every day it has to be the same. C. Cutoff C for positive control and sample are they same?
Yeah, it's already mentioned.
It's the same. It has to be the same. Value and interpretation. Then you have, let me see.
There was a question yesterday also. Is pooling possible in this platform?
No, it has not been validated. It has not been validated. Pooling is not validated.
ICMR has come out. Ministry of Health has come out with pooling guidelines
Yeah,
on
pooling.
a couple of days ago.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, this actually. Hello,
can you mute, please?
ma'am. Ashwin here. Yeah, I have a question. So, is Abbott planning to do this validation of the pooling technology? Because I think for the other tests, non-CBNet platforms, King George Medical University actually the pooling validation.
So I would recommend that these guidelines are the country-specific guidelines. If pooling is allowed as per the ICMR and they have a protocol, so I would suggest end of the lab can pick up and do the validation there, because essay is very sensitive, 100 copy per ml, so you can go ahead and do the
Yeah. Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, true.
I have a question. When you're pooling, what you're saying is 25 samples to be pulled in a protocol that government is come out with. So if suppose there's a sample with 100 or so copies, maybe 200 copies, wouldn't that get too diluted and become undetectable? Misha?
Sorry, I was reading some other question. Yeah, please tell me what was the question?
The ICMR's guideline that came out a couple of days ago is talking about pooling of 25 samples each. So suppose a low sample, maybe 100 copies. So both are diluted and become undetectable.
All these things have to be, done in the lab, and the proper validation should be done. As I said, the assay is very sensitive. So what I got from other users that it generates cycle number almost 5-10 cycles before than the other commercially available kits which are there in the market. So I believe that the assay is very sensitive, and if anyone wants to do validation at a lab for the pool, they can very well go ahead and do that. But right now, Abbott has not done a kind of validation.
Okay.
As Ashwin mentioned, this validation protocol has been validated at KGMU. There are few persons from our KGMU lab also. They can throw light on this.
So I would like to clarify for the surveillance only 25 samples are used. For the rotating, there is a separate guideline on prevalence. So if it's less than 2%, you need to pull up 5 samples only.
No, I would also like to say they have not mentioned that all the 25 samples have to be pulled. I think what they're saying is that take 25 samples and then pull them as per your protocol, 5 or 3 or whatever.
Yeah,
they have not mentioned that we have pulled 25. That much amount we don't need to. How can we pull so much?
Yeah, that's what it was all about. Yeah, okay.
I think it's not here.
Dr. Jain and Dr. Umla Venkatesh from KGMU, you conducted this study at your level, at your institute. Would you like to say something? Hello? Is anyone from Dr. KGMU?
I'm Dr. Jain from KGMU. Actually, I was just on, but somehow I could not hear a lot of discussion. There were a lot of things going on parallel. So, but I understand this discussion is about pooling samples for testing.
Right.
So what do you suggest? What the company suggests? How much starting volume are you taking to begin with?
From the started volume that we are extracted, which from the sample is 0.5 ml.
500 microliter.
Yes, right.
So I think at this point 500 microliter is a good volume. And if you're processing the whole volume to extract the RNA, and then how much of RNA are you picking up? The machine is picking up.
It's taking 40 microliters. No.
40
microliters is master make and 40 microliters is RNA. The total volume is 8.
So that's good. I think we should try some. But let's get started. We'll try some, then see comparison. If it works fine, this is okay. Because 500 microliters is quite a bit. And then if we add 500 microliter and we take 40 microliter of the RNA from this pool and then use it, I don't think we'll be missing much or any for that matter. Let's try it once and then we'll talk about it. So at this point we can say unless it's tried, we can do it.
This is Dr. Nitya from Jaipur. Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just saying that we can try, like we have been doing with 3 samples, like ICMR mentioned 5 samples. We tried with 5 samples, we did not get good results. And this I'm not talking about Abbott, but other machines, So manual extraction, etc. So here we can start with 3, 5 and more samples.
Ma'am, if you do the less number of samples in the pooling, that won't be cost effective. The purpose of pooling is to cost effective in the time management. So if you take 3 samples, if one is positive, you have to again run all 3. So in pooling, is always basic principle of keeping more sample so that in a low prevalence area,
But
that would be more cost effective.
now the thing was that it get the right result also. See, we have to go depend on epidemiological thing also, na? Like which places have how much of prevalence of incidence.
So,
So,
so I
Ma'am,
think
the
having the
basic,
protocol.
basic rule is, can I say something? Ma'am, the
Yeah.
basic
Yes,
rule
yes.
is if you have prevalence less than 2%, in that population, 5
Yes.
may work fine. If you have prevalence less than 1%, then 7 may work fine. But if you have prevalence like 5%, then take a call yourself that you really want to do pooling or not. If
yeah,
only
yeah, yeah,
5%
yeah.
of your samples
Yeah,
back,
yeah, I
you
agree.
will
The
reuse
thing was,
very large numbers.
the thing
So
was
I
that
would
I was
not.
in a group in which we were trying different number of pools, and we realized that 5 was missing some samples and 3 was good. So we have started with that for different
So
development.
it's okay.
Anyway,
I
for
think
this
every
machine,
lab
we'll
has
have
to
to
have some
because
experience.
this kit I think has a very good sensitivity, like you're saying, if it
Yes.
can detect 100 the thing. So I think we can do with more samples, but we have to try.
So,
Okay,
so I think for,
can I come?
I think for pooling purposes,
Hmm.
when you want to work it. So pooling should not be done in a symptomatic patient or admitted patient. It can be worked
No,
out only
no,
for
it's
the
only,
asymptomatic contacts.
sir, it's only
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the surveillance, no other purpose.
Yes.
So patients who
No
are
other
related as a
purpose.
part of surveillance, it's only recommended for that, not for patient management. If you have a patient who is
Absolutely.
No, no, no,
symptomatic, please do not do it. Do it
Yeah,
separately
yes.
Correct.
because you need
Correct.
very
Correct.
quickly. Right.
The thing is,
So
we are
the
in contact
idea
with the
of that,
IDSC, and they let us know that what is the prevalence in that area, and then we start contact
I say
IDSC
something.
for that.
Can I say something? I'm Dr. Smith Kulkarni. Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Actually, I don't think ICMR has recommended pooling 25 samples because it is quite a lot, and nobody has data on Abbott also. So right now we're using NIV kit which is provided by NIV, and I think NIV previously had recommended pooling 3 samples. So right now we are pooling 2 samples. But as somebody said, we should not. I mean, the priority samples or samples from admitted patients. There is no need to pool them. We can test them
Yes.
directly. But contacts and suspect cases can be pooled. We are pooling 2 samples at present and it is working fine. So at least for say 95% of the samples we are able to give report in time. Only 5 patients who are positive, we are keeping their report awaited and they are delivered on the next.
So that is, I think, that is all we can talk about pooling, है ना?
That's a good practice.
Okay.
Can I come and add one comment here? ICMR came with a guidelines in 2 stages regarding pooling samples. So for clinical diagnosis, they say based on the prevalence which you are encountering in your region, you can pool samples up to 5, and then your prevalence should be between 3 to 5%. Only in this condition, not more than 5 samples, and that came a few weeks back. Now, when the zero surveillance studies have come in, we have, this is just a few days back, where they have said that both RT-PCR as well as serological assays will be done, and then it will be around set districts, and each district will have 800 samples per month, and then it will be a huge number of samples. In that guidelines recommendation, they have used the word 25 cohort of 25 samples will be done to do RT-PCR. So,
Okay.
I think that 25 is for migrants, no?
25 is for your zero surveillance study which ICMR is going to start. It's only for zero surveillance.
So only for quarantine people and all that
Quarantine
stuff.
migrants.
One second.
No. General population.
One second.
No.
Zero surveillance study will be done both for low risk population as well as high risk population. There's a criteria that has been laid down. We will collect samples randomly, both from low risk and then
Yes.
low risk. They will be collecting patient sample which doesn't have ILI symptoms.
Yeah.
Visiting OPs, right? So they will collect samples from them. They will collect samples from pregnant females as low risk population. And similarly, they have criteria for gathering samples from high risk population. This is a huge zero surveillance study where RT-PCR has been advocated between a cohort of 25 samples. So this has just come up recently. It's not for clinical diagnosis. For clinical diagnosis, only when the prevalence is around 3 to 5%, a pool of 5, not more than 5 samples for clinical diagnosis is by ICMR.
Go on to the next question from Deepika Athe. What about human RNP? Is it not detected in the system?
So yes, for the internal control validation criteria, we have a different gene. The cucurbitapeptide inhibitory gene is there in the assay, which can be used as a whole process control for checking the extraction efficiency and PCR inhibitors. But to check the how the samples are collected, stored, and transported, for that, Abbott assay doesn't have any kind of gene that have counted RSP gene. So that's the limitation, as I have discussed on the very second slide. So we have the in vitro check and the extraction efficiency check control, but whether the patient samples are collected properly or not is something that the FDA cannot detect.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Dr. Titka? We move on to next question. Is there any sample inactivation step?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm assuming before getting into the SP.
Right. So we have discussed this step yesterday as well. So in continuation to that, so as such, if you have seen package insert of US FDA approved for emergency authorization, as such, there is no validated protocol mentioned in the package insert. But yes, we can suggest that how the customers worldwide are using and handling the samples before loading on the 2000 SE. So there are three methods, which is the common practice for all the users who are using the Abbott M1000 system for run COVID assay. So the very first method, which is being widely used, is heat activation method. So, like all the customers in South Asia and US are following the heat activation method. The temperature and timings are varying at other different sites. Like some are using 56 degrees Celsius, some are using 65 degrees Celsius, and all of them have given a positive recommendation that this method is the most effective method for inactivation procedure. So, we can provide the references where the customers are using, and also the references available that how this particular method is used successfully. The second method, which is widely used after heat inactivation, is the clinical lysis method, by lysis buffer activation method. But we have heard from the field that the lysis buffer method has two issues. That the first thing, it is diluting the sample, and the second thing, it is giving us more inhibition results. So, and also the third thing that is a major limitation for this method is that all the lysis buffers, they contain GITC. So if you add GITC in the samples directly for the inactivation, then how you are handling those specimens, because you cannot discard those specimens in the hydrochloric solution because it contains GIC. So all methods which have been discussed, they have limitations. And the third method, which is also being used by all the many users, is not doing anything with sample with proper PPE, like I discussed yesterday, full coveralls and respirators, proper respirators, they are used directly in the M1000 SP. So these are three methods, and all the methods that we have discussed here have one or other limitations. We need to see that which particular method is best suited for the lab, and we have to follow accordingly. So we will share all those references that we have with us for the heat activation, so we can share all those methods with you.
Thank you. The next question: how do you report in ICMR portal? The kit name is not reflected, still not reflected.
Okay, so we have solution here. Yes, one of the labs have written directly to ICMR, so we have interacted with ICMR that how the results can be reported. So ICMR has instructed labs to write there directly, so we can share email ID to whom have to write to. You can write to them directly, and all the technical documents that are required, we can provide all those technical documents so that you can approach them directly, and they are looking at it. So if one or two of the labs have approached and get this sorted, and automatically the software gets tested. Right now, we do not have it because nobody has started using it yet. So I know that one of the labs have already approached, and they are in the process of registering Abbott in the portal.
So, Manisha, this is Dr. Neeta Kulkarni. So, existing protocol which you are suggesting is without heat inactivation or assist. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes.
Right now, yeah, there is no Abbott validated protocol for this.
But when we will come to know about it?
Ma'am, we've shared references with you for the heat inactivation method. That is like the reference materials that use it for BEI. So all the reference material that we provide for as an external control, they have been heat inactivated. So we will share those references with you. So the lab has to take up any of the references and they can use it. Right now, Abbott doesn't have any kind of validated protocol.
But I think it is too late for Abbott because we need to know the instructions by now. If we are receiving it, we need to know which is the validated method for inactivation.
Right now, Abbott has not done validation for any of the methods, and they have left it to the customers because all the customers and across the world, whether it's US, Europe, South Asia, so all of them are using different protocols. So they have left it to the customer that how they want to handle the specimens as per their country-specific guidelines. That is what has not been validated. But if we have anything from them, from our scientific office, then definitely we'll let you know. But right now, we are sharing all the references that people are using. So we have spoken to all the customers that have taken their experiences and the successful results they are getting, and they have actually suggested to us. So we can send those recommendations and suggestions, and there are references available as well. So
we do not want references. We would like to have clear-cut guidelines from Abbott that use such and such protocol, either heat inactivation or lists. Because right now we are using lists for other kits, and I don't think that same list will be used for Abbott also. I don't think it is showing an initial. At least nobody has reported up now.
Ma'am, all the other, I will not comment on the other commercial kits which are available. As far as we know, all the automated platforms which have been used, all the USFDA approved protocols, none of the methods have been kind of activation method listed. And also the buffers which are people are using, only few buffers are validated by CDC. We have paper at which buffers are validated for the same. So these are very few manual kits which have given the validated protocols by CDC. So and the other automations that doesn't have any kind of validated protocol. So yes, this is the limitation that we have right now, but this is what I mean, the real situation today is. So we don't have any kind of validation.
So
today.
basically, you should be able to tell us which inactivation procedure we should use, and all 41 labs should use similar protocol, because nobody has time to go through references. One lab will use one LISIS protocol, another lab will use heat inactivation. That is not right. So we would like to have clear-cut guidelines from Abbott regarding inactivation of samples.
Ma'am, we can talk about this later on, but right now in this forum, I can tell you that we have discussed around this a couple of times, and this is what our suggestions that we have got from Abbott scientific team directly. So we will see that how we can do this up, and we will see this question later as well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
The next question is again from JJ. As there is no RNA detection, what about if clinical sample is not sufficiently collected?
Yes, so this particular point has to be, so that's a limitation. So the people who are collecting the samples, they should, collect it. Because this is something which is falls under the pre-analytical step. So so this is limitation that we cannot have control on how these samples are collected. So yes, so this is a limitation. We cannot comment on that. We can have control on the analytical step and the post-analytical step.
The next question is not very clear. It's from Samir. Nasopharyngeal swabs have 105 to 106 copies per ml of viral RNA. What about oropharyngeal? I mean, how's there a limit to nasopharyngeal swab? It could be a high viral load also. Do you have an answer to that question, Maria?
I can answer that, but the limit of detection is 100 copies per ml. So as such, both the sample types are validated. So yes, as you mentioned, that depends on the number of viral copies in the patient sample. So if you're trying to say that the oropharyngeal swabs have less viral copies, less than 100, then definitely yes, that is going to miss out. But if that is applicable for all the assays which are available in the market. So Abbott assay is the most sensitive assay, 100 copies per ml. So I think which is 100 copies or more than that will be definitely detected by the system and the assay.
Next question is, can pooling be done? We have already gone through that. So then the question from EJ, what about reporting CT values in ICMR format?
So that we have already discussed. So
reporting,
you can enter the CT value that is generated for the mixed fluorescence of RT and the genes.
I don't think there's a column in the format for CT values. You have to see.
I do not know. Day before yesterday when we went there, so we had this communication with ICMR concerned person for this. She has informed that there is a column for reporting the CT values for the genes. So I am not sure. I have not seen the software, but yes, we definitely we are going to add this kit in the software portal. So you will do. Let us know whether there is any method to report CT values, because as per our discussion with ICMR, I said there is a provision of entering CT values for NRDR genes.
Okay.
Yeah, but for CVNet, there's no CT value given. No? What are they following?
Manya, do you want to take the question?
I am not sure about CNAT. I'm not sure.
In CBNet, I have this thing. In CBNet, the report we get that we do get CT values for the EGEN. We do get the CT values in the report on SID. So we can enter that value in the ICMR.
So next question is, what happens if some amount of sputum comes into the tube while collection? Manisha?
Sputum comes in the collection. So for the samples to be loaded on 2000 SE, we have to see that samples are homogeneous. So I am not sure whether these kind of samples are validated or not, but we need to see as we get these kind of samples as how these samples are reported. So if you have sputum in the sample, we need to see that the sample is properly vortex and is homogeneous so that it can be picked up by the liquid handler. So like the samples which are difficult to pipette manually, the same way the samples are difficult to pipette in automation as well. So we have to make sure the sample should be pipetted, should be homogeneous and should be pipetted easily by automation.
Okay. Can we put samples? We've done with that. Is there a plan to evaluate BAL in the near future? In the near future?
Yes. So there are samples which are being validated. So as soon as we'll have more samples validated, we'll definitely come back and give those list of presents.
The next question from DJ, it's not very clear. Both are using FAM. How do you know dependent CT values?
So right now, our intention is to tell whether the sample is positive or negative. So I don't see any advantage of differentiating the RDRP and gene fluorescence, because both the genes are specific to the current strain. So any of the target which is showing a positive response, it has to be given as a positive response. So there is no advantage of differentiating the fluorescence coming from RDRP.
No, we have a problem. We have a problem here. Because we have to upload the value of CT on the ICMR website, and there are specific slots there to write whether it's for RDRP or any other gene. So that's a problem which we are going to face tomorrow when we are going to upload that particular data on the ICMR website. That's what the question was asked from our side.
So what I understand is in the portal, maybe the other genes which are listed, maybe it's not specific to the current strain. So RDRP is specific to the current strain.
No. They have option of 3 genes. The E genes, the screening, OIF, and RDRP. So we have to give the value, CT value for individual.
Okay. So since this is a confirmatory test, so this is not a screening test, it's a confirmatory test. So we can provide CT value against the RDRP.
Okay, got it.
The next question, can you use as a quantitation for research purposes? That's from Nal.
Ma'am, you can use it for R&D purpose. You can do it anything. Yes, any R&D you have to do your own validation. So if you want to use it for R&D purpose, you can go ahead and do it. The positive control provided in the kit has 1,000 copies primer. So if you want to do any kind of purification, so you can do your own validation.
I think 1,000 is very less. I mean, I was expecting that the control might have high viral load, so that we'll be able to dilute it and plot a graph. So 1,000 is a little less.
There are I have shown in the last slide BEI. It's a site. You can get all the references from BEI. So they are providing all kinds of external control. So you can get standards from there if you want to do quantification. BEI sources.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's what happens. Only one G is amplified. That's from Surma.
It doesn't matter whether one gene amplified, both gene amplified, because both are specific to these strains. So our intention is to detect it, whether it is 2 genes or 1 gene method. That is our dual probe strategy has advantage over cell probe.
Next question is also related to that. If only one gene is present, it affects the CT value.
Definitely, yes, it affects the CT value. The fluorescence is combined fluorescence from both. So here we are not quantifying it. So we are just detecting it by yes or no, whether the patient is positive or negative. So our intention is to detect the sample with whether presence of COVID RNA or not. So by 1 gene or 2 genes. So that is how the dual probe strategy is always better and sensitive than the single. That is how the sensitivity of the assay is really high 100 copies.
Next question is also from Nari. It's not a question, it's a suggestion. I think most of the labs are receiving 3 ml sample tubes. As we understand from previous testing, we can load 1 ml tubes directly to SP on SP. This can be recommended by ICMR as it will save the cost.
Okay, so for directly loading of the primary vials on the M2000 SP, it requires a little bit of calibration. So any lab, if they want to do this, can reach out to us. We will help them with the calibration of the sample input. But yes, it definitely requires the engineer on site. So look at the present situation, the feasibility of the traveling to the site, that is also coming to the picture. So if the engineer can travel to the site and if it's required, then definitely we can go ahead and do that.
Okay, thank you. Actually, list of questions is going steadily. You want to take all questions or the specified number of questions? Manisha and everybody else? There are 36 questions left. Or do you want to answer them privately or
Manisha,
take a few more questions.
I suggest that you list down all the questions and make a PowerPoint presentation as FAQs, and then we can circulate with all the participants. So
these questions we saved when we log off.
Chavi can help us out in that. So that
I can take all the questions.
Yes.
There is option to save the chat in the chat box. The three dots, and lower. You can save the chat.
So
Even otherwise, chat will automatically send the server. We can take it out all the questions.
So we will have all these questions. Prepare an FAQ, and then with the help of the Abbott, we get the responses and then circulate with the participants.
So we want to take more questions now, or do we want to maybe like 10 more minutes? Do you want to stay for 10 minutes more?
Just scan over the questions which are not repetitive. We can.
I'm just looking at it. We have done. Then there's a can RT-PCR inhibitors cause false negative or invalid results? That I think she already answered. Do you want to take again? Can RT-PCR inhibitors cause false negative or invalid results?
I would not call it that it can report it as false negative, because that is the purpose of internal control comes in. So if you have internal control, so if there are feature inhibitors, it will inhibit the internal control as well. So obviously you will never get a false negative result, but yes, error code will be generated if there are inhibitors as sample. It will also affect the internal control. So that is the purpose of adding internal control to it. So you will not get a kind of false negative, but yes, you will get error code generated against that sample. The sample has kind of inhibitors.
The next question will be starting volume 1.3 ml that has transferred from a BTM vial. Can you make it 1.2 ml? Cooling would be easier. You will take the question.
Okay, so we can go ahead and check where the 1.2 ml can help us taking the sample volume accurated. But I can tell you that why exactly it is taking 1.3 ml. So just allow me to share my screen so that I can help you out.
I have a similar question on this as well. See, basic volume it is needed is 0.5 ml. So why do you need 1.3 ml? I don't understand. Because for viral loads, for 600 they are loading 800 microliter. For 200 microliter, we are loading 400, 500 microliter. So why this needs to be so high? I don't understand.
So if you can just see my screen, can you see the screen here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so here you can see these are 3 tubes. The first one is the reaction vessel, which is second tube. Second one is transport tube, which is master vial, and third one is the primary vial, which is a co-UTA tube. So here you can see in the primary vials what happens. There are 2 beads which are present at the bottom. So this assay specific file, the protocol which is made for this particular aspiration by the liquid handler 9000 SP. So they are designed in such a manner. If the primary vials are loaded, it should not interfere with beads which are present at the bottom. So that is how you can see they have to leave during the calibration 8.5 mm of height, so that it will not interfere if any kind of primary vials are loaded on M2000 SP. In case of reaction vessel, the height of the tube is less, so that is how it aspirates till here, you can see, so that it cannot interfere in case lab want to use the other kind of primary tube. So that is how volume, the dead volume is a little higher for the reaction vessels if the lab is using the secondary tube. So that is how on the basis of the height of the tube, this is calibrated. I hope this answers your question.
Does that answer you? It is signed BD. Does that answer your question? Can you unmute and say something?
This is Gula Venkish. We just Gula Venkish.
Okay.
I'm not completely clear. I understand if we are using Abbott tubes as a secondary container. Is this much dead volume only for this assay? When it is not, like the Nari question was the same. Why do we need so much dead volume? If they use your
ma'am, these are the tube because it is calibrated. The protocol is calibrated with such a height. With such a height, the protocol is calibrated with such a height.
Calibrated to the same height. Right?
Exactly. Yes, that's right.
Can you just, Manisha, can you just tell me if we can use more than 1.3? I mean, suppose if it is like basically 1.3 is a very difficult calculation if you do it at any stage. So we would like it to be a round figure, like 1.6 or not an odd figure. So can I take
1.6? Yeah, 1.6 should be fine. That's not a problem.
1.6 should be fine. So it's going to be 1.5 ml of 1.6, and that should not be a problem, right?
That should not be a problem. Yes, it will be fine.
I do not think 1.2 will make any difference, because I feel we will be able to achieve with 1.2 as well. So we can think about pulling 2 samples, 0.6 each, or maybe just 0.4 each if we are pulling 3 samples. So.
Right. So I mean, I don't know if somebody would have calculated the dead volume, so we know what is the volume that's available to the machine, basically.
And is it the only protocol that is validated, Manisha, right now? Are you planning to go for 200 microliter protocol or 300, little less with little less volume?
Right now it's 500, so I don't see that there is a validation for 200 microliter.
So this is the only validated protocol that Abbott has right now.
Yes, because the LOD is determined 4.5 ml.
Okay.
Manisha, I have just one more question here.
Yes,
the same thing. You recommended 2 tube sizes, 16 millimeter and 13 millimeter.
That's right.
So the one that we have basically right now is 16 millimeter rack.
I mean, you have 13 mm. Blue one.
14 mm.
13 mm, yes.
13
mm.
The rack available is the 13 mm rack.
That's right, yes.
Shall we move on?
Yes.
Next question is again on sample activation. We have already talked about it. The reference will be sent to you. Vijay, will there be any leftover RNA in people lead to use it for other assay?
Yes, there will. For the total volume will be 90 microliters. So the rest of the volume will be used for the downstream processing.
Okay. The next question, for heat inactivation, there's no dry bath or water baths available in the viral labs. How will they do it? If they have to do heat inactivation?
So for dry heat bath, it is not recommended to do it dry heat bath because if direct VTM or UTM has to be heat inactivated, I don't think so any of the labs have that capacity of 96 samples. So the diameter of the tube is also bigger, so it will not accommodate in dry heat flow. But yes, all microbiology departments, I think you should have a water bath. The people using water bath directly for the heat activation.
Okay. I'm Dr. Vimla here. Manisha, I'm just sorry for interrupting. I was just looking through some articles, and yesterday I saw a JCM article which is published on 3rd of April. There, in fact, very statistically, it says that specimens must not be heated to 56 degrees for 30 minutes because this will degrade coronavirus early. So, is there some very specific recommendation you're making for heat inactivation? And this is there in the article.
Ma'am, there are mixed. We have also seen mixed references, but if you can see in the protocol, you can see there is an off-board lysis and on-board lysis. So in the protocol of extraction of coronavirus, so the 1C lysis buffer is added to the samples. The samples are incubated at 56 degrees Celsius in the protocol itself. So if it is like heat inactivating, it will degrade RNA, it will degrade RNA during the on-board lysis as well. And also we have seen other protocols where other viruses also incubated at the same temperature. So there are mixed responses. We have seen it, but yes, in the onboard, in the extraction protocol itself, you have incubation step, which is validated protocol.
Okay. And another question: after lockdown or in the lockdown, technical support will be possible from abroad or what? On site.
On-site technical support, definitely we have to see once the lockdown is over, if it's feasible, and if there is a requirement at the site, definitely field application person will come to the site for supporting. But right now, as I understand, all the users are well versed with the M2000 SB and RT. So this particular protocol, once you set up, and there is nothing special about it. It's same. All the regions consumables are same, and the users are familiar with it. So only the sample handling part little different. Otherwise, the rest of the procedure is very same, like we do it for child. So we'll see if in case there is a feasibility, and if we reach out to the site and it is required, then definitely we will see that we can reach the site for support. But yes, right now at the moment, what we are supporting through web, through calls, and offsite, and we will also share you the recordings how it can be set up. But I don't see a challenge towards the setting up of the S on the 2000 system.
Even I have one comment on this. Even after the lockdown period, basically you should understand the 13 months. The turnaround time for reporting is 24 hours. So if something goes wrong with the machine, we will need immediate technical support. We really cannot wait for a long time. So maybe you have to increase your technical staff for supporting the system.
Right. So you're talking in terms of engineers. There is there is a breakdown in hardware part of it. Definitely yes. So we are already looking at that how the placement of the engineers should be done so that the labs can be easily approachable by them. So we are looking at those strategy, and we are aware of it. So we know that the engineer visits are required for the hardware use. We understand that.
Yeah, because for viral load we can wait for a while, but we really cannot wait for SARS-CoV-2. So that should be considered, and we will need immediate technical support. So wherever you are planning to, you have more machines, maybe you can station one service engineer in that city itself.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. We are already planning.
Solution. Yeah.
We are already planning the strategy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall I take the rest of the questions later? There's also post-training quiz there. So shall I do the quiz and then answer the questions later through another webinar or something? What's your conclusion?
Dr. Just we have to conclude the training. We have one slide to show them that how we are going to move forward the training. So I would just take another 5 minutes to explain that.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
And then we can go ahead.
Then please make sure that you answer. There are 42 questions there, 42 chats there. Many of them could be questions. Make sure that you please make sure that to address them. Okay.
Dr. Anu, can I come in just for a minute, Anisha? If it is okay with you?
Yes.
So this is not a technical question, ma'am. This is Shantan Bhatt. I'm business for DCS Image Tech, and we are providing the support for Abbott Molecular Systems. 2 questions I've got. One is our team members constantly visit these COVID labs, and right now all the individual hospitals are doing a regular checkup for their personnel. Unfortunately, we are unable to do so on a regular basis for our team members if no symptoms develop and without a doctor prescription. So maybe we should look at getting our people checked on a regular basis at these sites also. So the question was, who should we communicate for this kind of a system to be put up?
That's a big question.
Yeah, but they can act as carriers, asymptomatic carriers also. And then labs without knowing whether they are infected or not?
I think you can just get in touch with the medical officers who are prescribing the tests in their facility, whichever facility your worker is. You can ask the lab who are the prescribing authorities there, and
Right,
because
ma'am.
healthcare workers are part of the screening network, and so
Of course.
you should just get in touch. You've got many sites, so wherever you go, also find out who are the prescribing authorities, and then check with them whether you can be swabbed. I think they won't know.
Fair enough. The second issue that we are facing right now is especially in the southern part of the country, wherein interstate travel team members, once they come back their home state, they are being put into a 14-day quarantine period. This has happened recently. So we require the help of the government to ensure that such a quarantine situation is not levied on our people.
Yeah, maybe that again, Manisha will have to check with ICMR how to go about this. Manisha, since you are anyway.
This is very important question that Dr. Sita Kulkarni has just asked before, 2 minutes ago. As we have our manpower, a team of application and service engineers, and we also understand that if there's any breakdown, then people have to travel to the state to get a system corrected. But if the state government have this kind of guidelines of quarantine people for 14 days, then it will be difficult for us to provide the support immediately as it is required. So this is a very wide question that we have to take care, and we need to see that how we can come. So, I can solve it at the moment, but yes, everyone has to think that how we can actually go ahead and check with the authorities that how we can fit and do this, because we need to understand from them what are the procedures, because the other vendors are all working in the market, and the rule applies to all of them. So we need to see that how it is applicable to as a rule for everyone.
Yes, I think you need to work on that about getting this kind of a pass or an exemption. I don't know if that's possible at all. I find it very unlikely, but maybe on 17th, when the lockdown rules are relaxed, it may become easier for you. We don't know yet. We have to play by the day when the new rules are coming up on 17th or 18th. Let's wait and see. In the meanwhile, work with the ICMR. That's all I can say. Manisha, there are 44 charts in the box now. I don't know whether the questions are relevant or whether they're repetitions. Please go through them and answer them accordingly after the session. Thank you. Please go ahead with your concluding slides.
Manisha, I suggest that you take up all these FAQs and some may be repetitive also, and develop an FAQ so that it's there for everyone. Means everyone from the questions that have been asked, they are all relevant.
Sure, ma'am, we will do that.
Yeah. Concluding slide, Manisha?
Yes, so I will just share my screen once again. So the last slide that I want to share with you all is the how we are planning to go ahead. Just a second. So this is a plan that we have devised to go ahead with the training of the approved next site for the COVID testing. So we have already conducted the sessions for yesterday with CC and today on the workflow of the COVID testing. So I hope the sessions are helpful for you. So if you want to get the session repeated, let us know. Otherwise, we will move forward for our next training plan. So in the next week, what we are trying to do is first of all, we will help you to get the application, the protocol installed in your SDNRTs, the help of engineers and application people. We will reach out to you and will have the protocol installed at your system. And maybe a few of you have already get the protocol installed, and on Monday itself, we will help the site to get the protocol installed. And then as soon as the reagents are delivered to site, have already started delivering the reagents, and maybe in 1 or 2 days, you will start getting the reagent. So that depends how the sites get the reagents. So once reagents are delivered, we will set up the dummy run with the water, where we'll make the COVID assay protocol on the M1000 SP. So you can perform water runs that you can use with that how this COVID assay is performed in M2000 SP. M2000 RT is really simple. You just need to load the plate and have the results on the system. So real-time period we will wait once the reagents are there, but we will provide a dummy run, water run on the M2000 SP to help to understanding the flow of the extraction and the mass spec setup. And then once the reagents are there, then we'll help you set up the COVID run with the actual reagents, and then there will perform the entire extraction, the real-time PCR. So this will happen, everything will happen in the next week, and it will happen as soon as reagents are delivered. So on Monday, we will help you installing protocol, and in the next week, we will help as per the sites are receiving the reagents, we will help them performing the dummy run as well as the active reagent run. This is the entire the timeline, tentative timeline is, and we will help you with the site at which site will receive reagents sent, but most of the sites are receiving reagents next week. So we'll follow the same, and all the application area-specific application and service engineers will be in contact with you for installing the protocols and for demonstration, for having the web expressions and web recordings to set up the run. And In case if there is any visibility reaching up to the site, we will perform on-site training as well. So this is how we are going to go ahead with the COVID testing the ABBOT platform. So if you have any questions, you have all the email IDs and contact numbers of your respective representatives and business field service engineers and application person. Feel free to reach out to us, and we will definitely help you, support you in your endeavor for doing the COVID testing in the emergency situation. So I would like to thank all of you for listening to us patiently, and definitely the questions which are unanswered, we are making FAQ and we will provide you those answers. And let's get started from Monday. So best of luck everyone, and thank you.
A quick post-training question, do you please answer, or shall we please start it? Shall we?
Yeah,
it's already
there.
Yeah. Okay,
They can click the poll which is at vote.
Polls पे जाओ and इसमें questions are available there.
Just only 18 people have voted.
Okay. Do you mind the rest of?
Are you going to inform us about the installation on 18 and about receiving free agents and kits also?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am. We will inform you.
Yeah. So our contact from Nari is Madhuri Sandane. You have message, phone number as well as my phone number.
Sure, ma'am. Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Ma'am, I just wanted to ask that if we have a negative pressure facility in our institute, then can we somehow take the sample in the negative pressure and then we can load the sample for in the water system? Is there a facility like that? We can somehow manage like that if we want to avoid exposure, like virus exposure.
Manisha?
So I would like to ask one question, that the negative pressure facility and the M2000 SP, where it is installed, how far is these two areas, or this area are same?
No, ma'am, they are far from each other.
Okay.
So they are on different nodes.
Okay. So I think this will not have much of help, because we need to see that where the SP is installed, we should have some kind of arrangement there. The two different floors will be difficult to have this process done.
Actually, I just wanted to say that the sample directly be opened near the machine, so it would be great exposure to the working personnel to work without any negative pressure or anything.
No, if you are working in the M2000 SP area, so the first thing that yesterday Dr. Sita has also explained it, we have to be really careful if you are handling specimens wherever whether it is a negative pressure area or a place like where M2000 SP is installed. So just treat that area as your contained area with the proper PPE, because you are handling specimens at that site. So I am not sure if you're not doing kind of differentiation between the different areas. So I understand we talk about two different areas, like amplification area where your M1000 RT is installed, or the other regarding PCS are installed, and the area which is meant for the sample extraction. So the sample extraction area, any hand COVID samples in that area should be contained area, and the user should be with proper PPE. So you have to wear your respirator, you have to wear the entire overalls, like it was explained yesterday. So if you have a negative pressure room, that's good, but you need to follow all the guidelines for viral testing as per the BSL level 2.
But if we are using the machine, is it possible in somehow, I'm just asking a question, I don't know what exactly, if it is possible or not, that we can lyse the sample in the negative pressure and then load it? Is that possible this way? Can it be possible?
See, as you mentioned that the on-board license is available in M2000 SP. So once the samples are loaded in M2000 SP, there is a first step which happens is the license of the additional license buffer to the sample which contains the GLTC. So on-board license. So your question is off-board license. If you want to do off-board license, whether you can do it or not. So yes, if you want to do off-board license by any of the methods which are suggested but not validated by ABBOT, if you want to do it, yes, you can do it in that area.
So if we do license the negative pressure, will it affect the procedure if we load the sample and license not going on inside machine and we are doing it off board? Then will it affect the system somehow, or that portion will be skipped by the machine?
No. In any case, on-board license will happen, because that is part of the extraction protocol.
Okay, so we can double the license, so that will not harm the sample, right?
So that is one of the limitations I have already talked about while explaining this procedure. So if I license buffer on board, so the